God, that was a nightmare, wasn't it? Howdy ho, folks. So, apart from the fact that the police are after me and I've got helicopters above me. Anyway, I wanted to talk to you about one thing that really scared me as a kid. Now, of course, we've all got our terrors. People don't like clowns. I was petrified of the xenomorph from Alien. It's fine. We all have our fears. And if this shirt looks creepy, it's because it's a big creepy smile. Mum found it at an op shop. It's great. It's kind of got that like elasticy feel that you'd think that like bathers would have, or maybe a shirt you'd sleep in at night. But the image is pretty like pressed, as you can feel. So like this, it looks like there's a line. It's just because it's actually been it was folded wrong, so it was squished. Anyway, I wanted to talk about The Simpsons, particularly Treehouse of Horror episode 6, or season 7 episode 6. This is the one where the last sequence, the infamous sequence, Homer is sucked into a 3D digital dimension and ends up trapped in the real world, the non-animated world. Interesting how that's the first line of the description on Wikipedia, or at least for that thing, given how it's the last segment of the episode. And it's a classic. I don't know if it was on VHS that I had it. So it isn't. Okay. I thought it was one of the episodes I had in the Simpsons Against the World VHS set, but no, it actually isn't. Thank God. Because I remember seeing this episode on TV. Now, of course, I was born in 98, so the episode was already like 6 years old or some shit by the time, probably 8 years old. I think it came out in 1992. But it came out, obviously, pre my existence, which is fine. That happens to a lot of things. So I remember watching it as a kid. And, I mean, a lot of people watch as a kid, and from the stories that I've seen, would go to school the next day and talk about how insane the episode was, because it was the first, like, proper depiction of 3D animation for a lot of people, and especially on a TV budget, to the point that I even watched, like, I think a documentary or something about the episode and how it was such an insane episode to make. From, like, the elements of them actually doing the 3D imagery of, like, Homer and Bart with his spiky hair, the pool and everything, to the fact that in the end, Homer gets sucked into a black hole, into the real world, the three-dimensional world, our world. And it was always a terrifying image to me, because for some reason, I always read it in a particular way as a kid. Homer falls into a skip, a trash can, the big bin, the big rubbish bin, gets out and he's like, oh, this world's ugly, whatever. And he walks around and he walks out into a street and all these people are looking at him and he's scared because everything looks weird because it's all 3D and he's a 3D animation walking amongst people with like decent shading and lighting. He still looks like an out-of-place Simpsons character, but there's enough that because it's a cartoon show, it makes sense that he looks like a cartoon in the real world. He doesn't look like a real person. I always loved that aspect about it. And he walks up the street, and then he sees a place called... he finds a place called Erotic Cakes, and he's like, ooh, cakes! So he goes in, and then the camera pans up, and you see people walking along the street as the credits roll. This is a big holy shit moment, because there's a lot of questions that arise from, what is Homer going to do now? Is someone going to shoot him because he looks weird? What's going to happen with Marge and Bart and everyone in the Simpsons universe, It's such an insane ending that it genuinely terrified me. And I don't know why, because part of me thought that when Homer went into that cake shop, obviously when I was a kid, I didn't realize erotic cakes means sexy cakes, so it was meant to be a joke. But all I saw was him going into the store, and my imagination was like, he doesn't come out of that place. This is like purgatory. Like he's done. He's dead. He's gone. Like it scared me because he was in our world and he was dead to me, like to some degree. But obviously, thinking about it, it breaks down more than that. It wasn't just me thinking that he was dead. It was the fact that he was dead to his universe. He was now in our world, which is like a hellscape for him. It's basically purgatory. he's basically gone to hell. I don't know. I don't really know if you can put it down to a religious thing, but like, it's it was always such a scary image of him just walking around in the real world. Something that fascinated so many people, that astounded so many people. Which, look, it still was for me, but I was terrified watching it, especially mostly by the end of it, by him going into that thing and the sad music kind of playing off with the whole idea of he's stuck here now, he's not going back home. And I was thinking of it before, because I was like, outside of, I needed an extra video for the month of October. But like, I was thinking of it, and I was like, because I'd seen someone had posted the image on Twitter, as one of those clickbaity, 10 conspiracies you wouldn't believe in the real world kind of bullshit. Which I think the whole thing was a joke, because it was like him, and there was a red circle around him, that kind of crap. And I looked at it, I'm thinking, God, that episode scared me. It was, I mean, it's a Treehouse of Horror, it's meant to scare you, but like, I don't know how much of the idea was meant to scare you, like him getting lost or whatever. Realistically, it just comes down to that basic summation of it was just him landing in this kind of, he's just not with his family anymore. He's away from them. He can't get back to them, all that kind of stuff. But for me, it just always felt deep down that there was something more sinister about the episode. And again, it's kind of me reading into this kind of like purgatory-like element that he's a character that's not fit for the real world. Like, he belongs in this cartoon universe because it's a cartoon universe. There's a safety there. You know, like how the classic sitcom has by the start of the episode and the end of the episode, the status quo has not changed. That's the point of a sitcom and an animated sitcom, unless it's one that just happens to go off the rails because it can. Family Guy does that often. There are a lot of other shows that still go based on the formula, that on the odd occasion just go a bit crazy. Simpsons has done it too. But Treehouse of Horror being an anthology, this is the one that shouldn't terrify me, realistically, because, like, in terms of going away from the formula, because it's a formula of 3 anthology stories, and they have no connection to each other. They're all just what happens in a scary version of the Simpsons universe. And it's like, the thing that stuck with me was just him being in the real world. Now, of course, it doesn't really sound too far-fetched, it doesn't sound too barbaric, but it's also like, I mean, it kind of is. Like, obviously, that makes sense. It's a cartoon character who's been teleported into our universe. It's a bit much. And it's still a fascinating episode to watch. Like, from all the 3D gags to all the amazing imagery that they use. Like, it still looks cartoony 3D, but it's meant to be, you know? It's just a 3D version of a cartoon. But still, it's like, the fascination and the woe factor of the episode still gets kind of, for me, decimated by the fact that it's just terrifying to look at. Like, the idea that comes from it. And I think, to some degree, like, it's one of those things that you'd think about every now and again, but you'd forget that it might have been real. Like, was that a real thing? And now, obviously, I can go on Disney Plus. I've got the DVD. I can just watch it whenever. And it still has such an insane effect to me, because you look at it and you watch it again, and you're like, I want more to this story, you know? Now that he's in this other universe, it's like, well, what the hell is he going to do, you know? Is he free to just exist? Are people going to be like, what the hell is this thing? You know? What's going to happen at home with his family, with his friends? Like, he's gone now, and they don't know where he is. They don't know if he's alive or dead. And they'll never know, because he'd never get back to them. And it's like, I think those are like the ideas that really stuck with me, which of course are the basic ideas that are there, you know? But it's just a long-lasting effect of how, not exactly like how it traumatized me or anything. It's like, nothing as fucked up as that. But like, just how much it affected me at the time and how freaky it is. But it's like, I think there was also just that weird, stupid interpretation I had where once he went into that store, he was like dead or something. And again, a permanence of death of a character in a cartoon show, again, an anthology episode, so it doesn't count, obviously. There's no real everlasting nature to it. But at the same time, you've also got him in the real world now. There's a reality to his presence. And for some reason, again, I don't know why, I was a kid, I thought that once he went into that store, he just stopped existing. Because again, I think because for me, I couldn't see him anymore. He didn't exist in my mind anymore. Now, like, in my mind, he's gone from this reality now as well, because he doesn't exist. I don't know why I read it that way. That was the stupid part of me reading it when I first watched it. Obviously, you look at it now and I'm like, it has this profound effect of like, this is, for me, I read this as like a form of purgatory, that he's gone into this human world, this 3D world, and it's just a nightmare, because it's not his thing. He's uncomfortable, he's unsafe, he's got no friends or family. Like, for all I know, this world exists where The Simpsons isn't a TV show, so people aren't going to be like, hey, that's Homer Simpson, you know? People are just going to be like, what the fuck is that? Like some kind of weird abomination. It's a curiosity. But I mix that with, in terms of as a favourite anthology episode for Treehouse of Horror, with probably the one where it's revealed that there are two Barts. And this is a infamous one, because Bart has a identical twin that lives in the attic that eats like dead fish or whatever. And I absolutely adore that episode. I'm pretty sure there was a movie Malignant. That's how I reviewed the Malignant when I first saw it. I'm like, oh, it's like that one episode of the Treehouse of Horror where there's two Barts. I love that episode of Treehouse of Horror. Like, I realize I can't really dive too much into the, episode 6 and whatever, and how much of a nightmare that was. What else can I read into it? I don't know. It fucking scared me. It still does. It's such a bizarre episode. But, on an opposite, there's a sketch that I love, that was an episode that I love, that has this really hilarious effect to me, because it has so many great gags to it, but also it's like, it's technically this kind of cliche idea of, oh, you were born with an identical twin. We didn't reveal this identical twin because, we got someone else to adopt them, but in this case, we put them in the attic. And it's like, okay, that's terrifying, how they never realized until now that there was this other person in the attic. Insane to me. But, like, I also just love the part at the end where, not at the end, but before the end, they get upstairs and what the hell's his name? What's Bart's twin? Oh, yes, Hugo. His conjoined twin from Treehouse of Horror Part 7. Nevertheless, this whole element with Hugo, it leads to probably one of my favourite gags in the show, which most people would know what I'm talking about when I mention it immediately. The whole when Dr. Hubert grabs a picture frame and he's like, Hugo, I bet you've never seen yourself in the mirror before. And he puts up the mirror, but it's just a frame, and you can just see Dr. Hubert, and he just punches him in the face. I love that gag. That's my second favourite of those Treehouse of Horrors. I don't really think I've got a third favourite. I mean, I've always liked the Island of Dr. Moreau one. Yeah. That's just fun, because you can just make great cartoony creatures, and then by the end of it, like, Homer's so scared, but then he's like, oh, actually, my wife has become this, like, overly sexualized cheetah cat creature. All of my kids are weird animals as well. What are me? What animal can I be? And he gets to just choose, and he chooses a walrus, and I'm like, I love this. I think that was one of those things that's like, that's one of the areas that made me really appreciate and get into, like, classic horror that include monster designs. Because, of course, you got to have something that will introduce you to this kind of stuff. Now, of course, I'd already seen quite a few of the Universal monsters and stuff like that when I was a kid, from Frankenstein to Dracula and the Mummy. And there was the occasional horror film that I'd watched with a creature design, but you gotta just respect and love when a cartoon is able to present these monsters in such a degree, but, like, gives it a comical tone, so of course kids cannot get too scared by it, but also there's a scary nature, but also a levity to it, Like, it raises, there's a tension about, oh my god, there's these evil creatures, but it's actually, they've still got the personalities of the characters. It just looks goofy because it's a cartoon. I love it. I just kind of wanted to discuss, I guess, my three favourite. There's so many goddamn Treehouse of Horrors that are brilliant, and it sucks on my part that I'm not really great at really picking and choosing. It's not like I've binged through all of them or anything. I did that last year actually. I watched like 15 or 16 Treehouse of Horrors. It was pretty good actually. I hadn't watched a few of them, but then a lot of them I hadn't watched for so many years. And getting into that one where Homer goes back, he goes into this 3D world, it was like, wow, this is it just reignites something in my brain of just how depressing of an episode it was in a way. Like, just it just made me so sad that like he was gone. But I think part of me was like, it's sad that he's gone from his home, his family, the things that make him safe. But it was also like I simplified it in my brain to just the element of he's gone for good because he goes into this store and just vanishes. You know, if he's not on the screen, it means he's dead or some bullshit. So, in this stupidest evaluation of me interpreting it that way led to actually there's a lot more of a layer to it. You know, many more layers of how I thought about and interpreted this episode since then. You know, compared to Bart has an evil twin, or these guys are people that now are animals. Hoy, you know. I don't know. There's just something else about that one where Homer goes into the 3D world. It's just got something else to it. Real punch. Anyway, what do you think? Have you seen The Simpsons? I mean, most people, I'd assume, have. I mean, it's been around long enough. Do you have a favorite Treehouse of Horror? I'm not. I can't say I'm not well versed in them because again, I've seen a lot of them. I don't think I've seen all 30 or whatever of them. I've seen maybe 20 at the least, which is still a pretty good number because I made sure that I went through every single one of them for like Halloween last year. But the problem was as well is that like on Disney Plus, it was kind of awkward to find them because it didn't really have like a playlist for them, or like the playlist that it had for them, it didn't allow you to just play all of the episodes chronologically or whatever. Once you click play on an episode, it would play the episode in the middle of that season. So as if it would jump you to that season, so the next episode would be a regular episode, so I'd have to go back out and then put on the next episode, and I just binged watched them, episode after episode after episode. Totally worth it. And I would totally do that again, because it's one of those classic things about something like The Simpsons, where you can watch, not just like the older seasons, but you can watch so many of these episodes on repeat, because they're so well made. And you know, it's always fun to watch a Treehouse of Horror, and I'm interested to see what comes out of this year's. I think I watched last year's, but I don't know. It's been a while. I haven't watched a Simpsons episode in a while to begin with, so I don't know. I just thought this would be a fun topic to talk about, and how just. I mean, I know that episode had a lot of an effect on most people. Most people were, holy shit, it's a 3D world of 3D graphics, but then he goes into the 3D world, the real world, and it's like, there's so many things to talk about and like about that episode. And I think it won a couple of awards as well. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised. Anyway, that's all for now. Yeah, let me know your thoughts, and I'll see you in the next one. Adios.